Blessed day, soul family. Welcome back. Tai Chi Tuesday today. You knew Chuān Suō, Fair Lady weaves the shuttle, or Fair Lady works the shuttle. Today, Tai Chi Tuesday, we're looking at some Tai Chi movements, and we're connecting it to the brain science and the mental health and the wellness. So let's get into it. Yesterday we were talking about what were we talking about yesterday? Let's see. What are we weaving? So as the fair lady weaves the shuttle, we're talking about what are we weaving? And we're integrating the concepts of order and disorder with regard to mental health. Um, we're going to talk about the network theory and this idea of how symptoms come together to create mental disorders as science is continuing to research mental health. And then we're looking at going back to the mask concept, dropping of the mask, and we might get to it, I'm not sure. Pandiculation. Pandiculation. Have you ever heard of this word? I just learned of this word. I don't know why it hadn't come across my radar, but it's along the lines of somatics. So let's dive right in. We are trying to build connections of order, not build connections of disorder. So when we talk about connections of order, let's remind ourselves that we are almost, creating a narrative, but let's call it the Wu-Ji narrative. And the Wu-Ji narrative tells us that there is Wu-Ji, there is Taiji, and there is yin yang. The important thing for us movers and people that are interested in somatics is that Tai Chi is the invisible force that is weaved through all of these things. It's almost the unseen that brings about the seen. So you have these first two yin and yang here, and then you have four phases, eight trigrams. Okay. But in order to make those things, something has to generate it. Tai Chi is the movement that generates it. Remember that Tai Chi is not this yin yang symbol. Tai Chi is the Taiji symbol. And so you can see that this makes the 10,000 things, is what we end up calling it. The 10,000 things. And there's this element of spreading and growing, not too different from the roots of a tree and the branches of a tree. So we also get the image in martial arts of growing roots, growing mental roots. I wanted to open this one here. And so we're going to look at structured order, but also structured disorder. Interesting thing that came about in the research. So a here is a combined image of Taiji and Yin Yang. I like this image. I put it on a t-shirt. Is it one or is it two? Is it two or is it one? But remember that Wu Ji is the foundation. Yin Yang is not is the Wu Ji is the mother of Yin and Yang. But Tai Chi is not Wu Ji, nor is it Yin and Yang. Tai Chi, in fact, is what is in between all things that are growing, birthing, and dying. It's the force which facilitates nothing into something, right? Going back to 10,000 things, the force that brings about these things here. So that's our structured order, right? Now let's look at structured disorder as we're kind of towing these lines of health and wellness with regard to mental health and the domains of wellness. So when we're looking at, let's look at what structured disorder is and brings about. This is a paper here, a PubMed. The theory of mental disorders, a network theory. So the network approach is a psychopathology is approach to psychopathology has been advanced as an alternative way of conceptualizing mental disorders. So conceptualizing mental disorders, conceptualizing how mental disorders arise, manifest, come together. And this approach arise from interactions between symptoms. So how do symptoms come about to bring about mental disorders? Although the network approach has led to many novel methodologies and substantive applications, it hasn't been fully articulated, and this scientific picture um, helps to do that. I'm going to go through the images here. So the images here, you'll see, see if I can make it bigger. There we go. So here in the middle, you have symptoms. This is kind of what we do when we have cold and flu symptoms. Do you have a runny nose? Do you have a sore throat? Do you have an itchy cough? Well, do you have body aches? When we have body aches, we know that that means possibly flu. So that could be like S4 right here. That's something different. If you have, so in my case, right, let's say sore throat, runny nose. This is the okay, here we go. Sore throat, runny nose, chills, and body aches. Once you get chills and body aches, that's going to bring about E2, possibly what the flu might be. But alone, standing alone, just a runny nose, oh, it might just be allergies. A runny nose and maybe a sneeze, well, that's nothing either. But once you start to get maybe, let's see, S4 right here, like body aches, and S2, sore throat, that might start to mean something, right? That might take you into this. So, you have a symptom which alone can just stand on its own, E1. This symptom can stand on alone, E2. But once you start to get compounding systems, then you start to make networks. So let's say, for example, a mental disorder or a mental health breakdown. Let's say you have a death in the family. Let's say you lose your job. Let's say you end up gaining weight over the past month or weeks or what have you. And then let's say you get evicted or something. I don't know. But these things can lead to a breakdown, nervous breakdown, what have you, stress, there could be conflict, what have you. So those sort of things can also characterize the symptom network. Okay. Now, when we start to look at here's more symptoms, right? You see this little cluster of symptoms here. You see this cluster of symptoms here. So let's say you're experiencing these symptoms and you've got these things that are now the symptoms that are starting to manifest into larger symptoms of disorder. And then let's say in your body, your neck, your back, what have you, starts to bring about stress, disorder, pain, what have you. And then let's say you stub your toe and you end up limping. And then as you limp, for the next month, you develop sciatica pain, back pain, and now you start to get a whole bunch of accumulative sort of symptoms that can start to really now bring you down. So, this image here is going to now start to talk about the phases in the development of mental disorders according to the network theory. After an asymptomatic phase in which the network is dormant, phase one, it's dormant. An external event activates some of the symptoms, phase two, and which in turn activate connected symptoms. If the network is strongly connected, removal of the external event does not lead to recovery. The network itself is self-sustaining and is stuck in its active state. So all these external things could be like a car crash, losing your job, economic crash, war, right? Those things can be external events that can just compound what is already kind of internally present. Your stress, your lack of sleep, eating poorly, not being dehydrated, what have you. So you want to have an idea, a sense of resilience. And this image here shows the resilience network in contrast to the vulnerable network. And I think you are able to see these. Just want to make sure real quick. Yeah, you're able to see these. Okay. So I know this is a lot of images and stuff, but you can see right here in the middle, it starts to change. So it's going from left to right at the top, going from left to right at the bottom. The resilient network here at the top, you see there's a dormant system there, and then a symptom starts to arise. That symptom awakens two connections. Those are connected by one line. Those two connections, then, oh, that's the resilient network. So those two connections are not sustained for whatever reason. And then you have sort of a resolution and you come back to the dormant phase, where in contrast, the vulnerable network changes here, where you have the dormant state, you have a symptom or a component that brings two symptoms online. Those two symptoms then start to awaken two more connected symptoms, and then you start to get a large chain that develops. And then you could probably figure out that it goes to, compounding in this sort of way. So that's called the network theory for mental disorders. I think it's really interesting how that comes about. And I kind of like that idea because in Qigong, we talk about the creating the conditions. So in Qigong, we want to create the conditions for what? Quality and quantity of Qi, circulation, flow. That includes breath work, relaxation, continuous movement, persistence, dedication, discipline, good food, good air, good water, all these things that we're trying to be consciously active of in order to sustain resiliency. Okay. So where does that take us? We've looked at the natural order of structure in terms of the 10,000 things, right? And then we looked at, interestingly, the structured disorder, right? And so we want to have an idea of what we want to weave in our lives and what we want to put together and how we compound the conditions for vitality, for healthness, for wellness and health. And so here's where I'm going to now start to bring about awareness. Are we always aware of the conditions that we're building? Are we always aware of the stress that we are holding, the stress we are releasing, our sleep, our hydration, our food intake, the company that we keep, the conflicts that we resolve, the time in nature that we spend? And we might be able to say, it's easy to say, yes, I'm aware of all that because I have an active, light, healthy lifestyle. However, I came across this term called pandiculation. Pandiculation. So, what is pandiculation? Pandiculation is the response that the body has when it yawns and stretches, right? What is pandiculation and why does it feel so good? You see this guy. When do you do that? Well, you do that when you're going from a resting state to an active state, like waking up in the morning from your sleep. So it sounds like something you might do in math class, right? That's what the article says. But it refers to the yawn stretch reflex. And it's hardwired into the brains of humans and other mammals. So we do this just like we don't have to think about breathing, we don't have to think about pumping the heart, we don't have to think about stretching and yawning upon waking because the biological system that the body is going to induce that. It's a big stretch you do with your arms and your body, often a yawn at the same time. It's involuntary, meaning you do it automatically without thinking. I just said that. But it's to reboot the nerves to control muscle contraction. It eases muscle tension that accumulates due to lack of movement. Animals do this, in even hippos, and even a fetus in a womb would do this also. So, what triggers pandiculation? Experts aren't sure exactly. They believe it starts in the area of the brain of the hypothalamus, and it's related to a release of cortisol. The hypothalamus helps maintain balance in your body, controlling processes such as sleep, mood, body temperature, and hormones produced by the hypothalamus activate other hormones in your body, including cortisol. Interesting here, we have a yin and yang contrast or a complement. We have a duality here because cortisol is what happens when we get into the fight or flight. We start to induce a fight or flight response, and you start to feel blood coming or cortisol coming into your blood. You might start to feel agitated, activated, ready to run, or ready to you're on guard to defend yourself or something, right? However, there's a yin aspect to cortisol in which when you yawn and stretch your body, cortisol is released. But that's part of the body's internal clock. It's complicated, it says. There's also a release of dopamine, and that's why maybe yawning and stretching feels good. Dopamine is a feel-good chemical, right? So how is pandiculation different from stretching? Okay. So pandiculation is different. When you pandiculate, you stretch your muscles while contracting them at the same time. Stretch and contract at the same time. In essence, you're pulling in one direction as you push in the opposite direction. Where active stretching is when you contract one muscle to stretch an opposing muscle. Dynamic stretching includes movements such as lunges, hip circles. Passive stretching is using a prop or uh, something to that effect. Static stretching, you hold a pose to stretch your muscles as much as you can. So pandiculation is also unique because it's an automatic response, right? Stretching, on the other hand, is something you do intentionally. Now, here is really something interesting because we've talked about the self-critic, we talked about the default mode network that induces self-reflection, right? Self-reflection has it conveys the idea of being aware of what you're thinking and what you're doing. So how often, can you remember the last time that you yawned and stretched? Well, why would we need to? There's no reason why we need to. We do that in the privacy of our homes. So that's nothing that needs to be introduced to society. However, in school, what were we told about yawning, right? Or what were we told about slouching in school? So oftentimes when I'm facilitating Qigong and I see people yawn, that's a good thing. I like that because the yawn also signifies the parasympathetic activation. Oftentimes when people are rushing to class, right? They're usually late. They're usually, coming from this, that, and the other that they're trying to check off the list to come to class, right? Or to come to the facilitation, the workshop, what have you, the retreat. So they're in a sympathetic response. That's not going to be conducive to a good Qigong experience. So we have to facilitate through the theta shift. We talked about this before and even yesterday, the relaxation response. And the relaxation response is foundational for Qigong. Embryonic breathing tells us this, going back to that first cell pre-social conditioning, right? That's important because we're talking about pre-social conditioning and we're talking about the restriction of oneself, the censorship of oneself to not yawn, right? If people are in my Qigong class and they restrict themselves from yawning, they're going to think that they're rude. Oh. But I want to see that because I want to see that people are following and activating their parasympathetic response. I want to know that down regulation is happening and that relaxation is filling the room. That's going to fill the vibe and that's going to facilitate a group compounding immersive experience. So you can see how we're putting these things together in terms of our awareness, how we're moving our body, and the conditions for health, wellness, along with the contrasting societal conditioning and pressures. Okay. So, are you aware of your movements? Are you aware of the uh, threads that you're weaving to build your wellness state and maintain it, and then to strengthen and improve it? And how does that also integrate with dropping of the mask? So some let's go to today's calendar movement. Remember, we have a Taiji calendar installment daily where we mostly provide and give a Taiji movement, one movement. Today it's a quote. So here, this is from the Taiji Ball book by my teacher, Dr. Yang. Jin, it can be classified. So Jin is power. Jin is force, energy that is moving through the body. In martial arts, typically we're talking about force that is being emitted for a strike or to block or to grab or to seize or to wrestle. Jin can be classified as hard, hard, and soft, right? Similar to yin and yang, right? Could be yin, could be yang. Hard Jing is manifested like a hard staff, a wooden staff. Soft hard like rattan. That's like a rattan. It's got some, start to feel a little bit of pliability. Soft Jing and Yi and soft Jing. Oh, wait. So soft Jing, Yi, and Qi are primary. The body is soft. Okay, I got to read this fully. Hard Jing is manifested like a hard staff, soft hard, like rattan. Soft hard is like rattan. Soft Jin, Yi, and Qi are primary. The body are primary. The body is soft and the Jin is manifested like a whip. So I don't know what I did with that quote there. Yi and Qi are primary. The body is soft. And okay. So you want Yi and Qi to lead the body. You don't want body to lead the Qi. You want the energy to come. If you've ever done hard Qigong, you know that you want the mind and the energy to fill the limb first before you make the hard. It's kind of like if you don't know what hard Qigong is, you clench your fist really tight, then your forearm really tight, then your bicep really tight, then your shoulder, and you have this whole full experience section by section. When we're doing internal martial arts, we want the mind and the energy to go into the section first before we physically clench and tense it. This is important. Why? If the mind is there, that means awareness is there. Going back to, are you aware of your yawn and your stretch? Okay. So interestingly, too, right? If the finch is clenching, but the mind isn't there, what's guiding the fist? If it's the emotional mind, then we could be headed down a dark path. So here now we're starting to see the self-regulation, self-restraint, and then also nature gong fu and the connections. If you have the fist connected to the bicep to the elbow, and you have the fist connected to anger, and you have someone there to be angry at, that's not a good connection. That's a network connection of disorder, right? So let's look at how Tai Chi builds the connections for order in the Tai Chi calendar series. Okay. So here, this let's first show you the final movement. All right. Okay. So let's take a look at this. This is a little fun break. Taking a look at a master weaver doing what she's doing. I just am just impressed, amazed, and dumbfounded.
This particular shape of loom was four-posted because there's like a bed, a post at each corner, and the seat is attached. Sometimes they were separate. These today are sometimes called barn looms, but we think that's mostly because people stored them in barns. The people who used them would not have called them barn looms. And it's probably about 200 years old. One of the most interesting things for me about this loom is that the way it's constructed shows it to be a linen loom. The framing of the loom that helps the support is right on the ground rather than up 6 or 8 inches. And what that allowed the weaver to do is, working in a room with a dirt floor, they would have thrown 1 or 2 buckets of water under the loom to create a more humid environment for weaving linen.
Wow.
Here in Virginia, at least in the warmer months, we don't really need to add.
So look at all of the connections that are coming together to make what? She's making basically she's weaving and threading, some sort of cloth that's going to be used for, could be whatever, clothes, could be, look at how the feet are involved. Those you could think of the legs there, not her legs, but the legs of the loom as limbs. Look at these arms that are being utilized and activated to structure and order the thread. It's just amazing. Look at all of this order to bring about, something that's going to probably keep someone warm or keep someone clean. Let's go to now Fair Lady Weaving the Shuttle. Yu Chuān Suō. This is the beautiful pond in Texas where I was helping a young man recover from a traumatic brain injury, TBI. Here's Fair Lady weaving the shuttle, walking. Now, the question we're asking is, how are we building the conditions for balance, for full body movement, for relaxation? Posture and essentially application. Okay, so you have the legs, the lower body, the upper body. How do we put it together? How do we bring about order to the chaos? Right, here's just the upper body movement. And I talked about this recently, and I showed the pieces that come together. Interestingly, we're showing the Fair Lady weaving the shuttle again. But now you can see this movement is different, and because I'm not walking anymore. I'm staying in one stationary place, but I'm repping out the upper body. Why is that important? Repetition builds proficiency. Repetition provides the opportunity to smooth out and to carve out the edges. So remember, Qigong foundations have to be here, right? Moving from the center, breathing with the movement, spinal wave connected to the root, And if we want to look at what other components are bringing about that structured order, then we just do the movement in place in one direction. Here with the double hand yang coil. You could see how now this one movement will eventually, and the proficiency of this movement will eventually feed into this movement here. Upper body moving, yang reaches max, low upper body down. Upper body, hands moving, yang reaches max, yin, coiling in, circling in, and the cycle continues. Similar here, you see the circle from the side, from the front, yin side circling in, coiling in, yang side circling out and up. Honoring through the Tai Chi movement, through our movement, honoring the yin yang cycles, that structured order where the legs are holding up the upright posture, the spine is facilitating arm movement through the spine wave, and that is how we get over time proficiency in our Tai Chi movement. A network of order, and then how also we combat the network of disorder. Because if we can distribute the mind into the legs, into the hands, and utilize the torso, then we use and acclimate to the body as one, coming back to that unity of oneness. What does oneness give us? Coherence. It gives us differentiation or integration of differentiated parts, right? Starts to give us the conditions for the balance and harmony that we're seeking. And if we maintain that balance and harmony, then we can stave off imbalance. We can stave off disorder, whether it's in the mind or it's in the body. And we know that there's not a huge gap or distance between the connection of mind and body. So I'm going to continue just kind of expanding on this idea of pandiculation because I think it's very interesting in terms of somatics and the sensations and feelings. For example, we talked about yesterday, we talked about can you feel, can you sense when you're coming from an excited state into the relaxed theta state? And I'd really like to explore that more in some groups and cohorts about what happens when we start to theta shift and come down regulate, come into the parasympathetic response, and how that is connected to what we are weaving, and if we're weaving order and or disorder. So let me know what you think. Um, and I'll be back tomorrow for Wellness Wednesday. Remember to embrace the woo and may your chi flow smoothly.